I'm seeking justice for the nurses who tortured my grandfather. My grandfather, suffering from Parkinson's, lived in a care facility in Willow Creek, Oregon. Every time I visited, I saw new bruises on his frail body. The nurses claimed they came from falls, supposedly common with Parkinson's. But one nurse, Clara, always smirked when she said it. I felt something was wrong, but had no proof until a janitor named Leo pulled me aside in the parking lot, just before quitting, saying he had to tell me something. He showed me that the nursing staff kept a betting chart in their lounge, wagering daily on which residents would fall and how often. My grandfather was on that chart as Trembling Tom, with nurses betting on whether he'd fall more or less than 3 times a shift. My hands shook with rage as Leo showed me a photo he'd snapped that morning. There was my grandfather's nickname, with dollar amounts next to different nurses' names. Clara had bet $20 on 4 or more falls that Friday. Another nurse, Denise, wagered he'd fall during his shower. I wanted to scream and lash out right there. My grandfather was the man who raised me after my parents died, who taught me to tie my shoes, who, despite his trembling hands, still tried to slip me $5 bills. I marched to the administrator's office with Leo's photo, but she glanced at it and called it a misunderstood morale tool for tracking incidents. She said Leo was a fired thief, a lie he'd warned me they'd use after he spoke out about the betting. I demanded my grandfather's incident logs, which listed 17 falls in the past month, all marked unwitnessed and blamed on his condition's progression. Shaking with anger, I asked why he fell so much more here than at home in Eugene. The administrator said care facilities were different from homes, and I shouldn't compare. In my grandfather's room, I found him in his chair, a fresh bruise under his eye that wasn't there yesterday. My heart broke. He whispered that Clara had put his cane out of reach that morning, forcing him to hobble to the bathroom alone. He said Clara and Denise often did this, placing items just beyond his grasp, daring him to move without support. They'd call him urgently for pills, then act surprised when he fell, rushing to obey. He'd stayed quiet, scared of Clara's threat to move him to the memory care unit in Salem, where visits were limited. I held him as he cried, my anger burning to destroy the facility with those nurses inside. The administrator said, without proof of intentional neglect, she couldn't act on a confused old man's words or a fired janitor's claims. I called elder care services, but they said the facility's records followed Parkinson's protocols, and betting, though wrong, wasn't illegal without evidence of harm. A resident's son told me his mother stopped falling after leaving Clara's ward. A daughter said her father with ALS fell constantly until a hidden camera and lawsuit threat ended it overnight. When I confronted Clara, she smirked, saying my grandfather was lucky to have such a caring granddaughter, but maybe I should consider memory care since I seemed stressed by normal Parkinson's symptoms. Denise, laughing behind her, called my grandfather a sturdy old goat who could handle a few spills. A few spills, like he was their toy, and I had to stop myself from attacking her. That night, my grandfather clutched my hand, begging me not to leave him there, terrified to sleep because nurses sometimes pulled his blankets, causing falls as he grabbed for them. He said Clara won $50 last week when he fell 5 times in a day, counting their money in front of him as he lay on the floor. My grandfather, who'd spent his life caring for others, was their game for pocket change, and no one would stop it. The next morning, I called every family with a loved one in the facility. 8 confirmed excessive falls that stopped when nurses or facilities changed. One woman overheard Denise joking about earning gas money off the shufflers. The betting chart had run for at least 2 years, and management likely knew. These nurses would pay for tormenting my grandfather for sport. I sat in my car outside Willow Creek Care Center for an hour that afternoon, Leo's photo glaring from my phone. My hands trembled at the dollar amounts next to my grandfather's nickname, $20 here, $15 there, all betting on an old man's falls. I wanted to storm in and expose their cruelty, but getting arrested wouldn't help my grandfather. Rage clouded my thoughts. I needed to be smart. I needed solid evidence, not just one photo and a fired janitor's word. At home, I made a plan. That night, I gathered every photo I'd taken of my grandfather's bruises over the past 6 months, snapped because I sensed something was off before Leo's revelation. Each had a date stamp. I matched them to my visitor log. Comparing these to the 17 incident reports, patterns jumped out. Every fall happened during Clara or Denise's shifts. never with night or weekend staff. I built a file, Leo's photo, incident reports, my bruise photos, and transcribed conversations, especially Clara's memory care threats and Denise's sturdy old goat comment. I made 3 copies, storing one in my desk, one in my car, and one in a bank-safe deposit box. The next morning, I called an elder law attorney, Ellen Carver, recommended in an online support group. She listened without interrupting and set a meeting for that afternoon. "Don't confront the nurses directly," she warned. "They could claim harassment." At her Portland office, she was younger than I expected, mid-40s, with sharp eyes. She studied my file page by page, lingering on Leo's bedding chart photo. "This is good, but not enough," she said. "They'll say it's a joke or misunderstanding. We need proof of intent to harm." Elder abuse cases were hard, she explained, with facilities backed by strong legal teams. We needed a clear pattern, witness testimony, and ideally, staff admissions. She suggested I keep visiting and documenting while she built a case. "Protect your grandfather from retaliation," she said. "Can you visit every day?" I said I could and would. The next morning, I found my grandfather crying, his lunch tray placed across the room, out of reach. He whispered that Clara had threatened to move his mealtimes to overnight, banning visitors if I kept making trouble. "Please be careful," he begged. "I don't want them hurting you too." I promised to be cautious, but inside I was furious. They were scaring him to silence us. I varied my visit times mornings, evenings logging nurse shifts, fall times, and affected residents. The pattern was clear. Clara's Monday to Thursday shifts saw my grandfather fall 3 times on average. Denise's Friday to Sunday shifts saw more. Night and evening nurses? No falls. I reached out to support group families. 3 shared similar stories. One daughter graphed her mother's falls, matching specific nurse schedules. "After I threatened a lawsuit with camera footage, her falls stopped," she said. Another family moved their father after 23 falls in 2 months. At the new facility, he never fell. A third was still fighting for someone to listen. Ellen filed a complaint with the state ombudsman. "Once they're notified, the facility will know we're serious," she warned. "They'll retaliate." 2 days later, a CNA, Mia, pulled me aside, whispering nervously, "I want to help but can't lose my job. Check the equipment log for when canes are signed out for cleaning." She rushed off. At the nurse's station during shift change, I found the log. My grandfather's cane was signed out for cleaning at 6:45 a.m., Monday, just before bathroom time, and again at 11:30 a.m., before lunchtimes matching his falls. Someone was creating a paper trail to explain missing equipment. I printed the logs, highlighting the fall correlations. The next morning, the receptionist gave me a new policy limiting visits to 2 30-minute slots weekly, citing family disruptions. I knew this was about my evidence gathering. I called Ellen from the lobby. She told me to document everything while she filed an emergency injunction. Within hours, she demanded my visiting rights be restored, citing Medicare funding's federal access rules. The facility's lawyer argued private policy rights, but Ellen cited federal mandates. While waiting for the judge's decision, Ethan from Elder Care Services called, saying my new evidence equipment logs and bedding photo reopened the investigation. He planned an unannounced visit next week. I bought a button-sized camera from a Portland spy shop, recording 6 hours, legal in common areas per Oregon's one-party consent law, Ellen confirmed. The judge restored my visits, but staff watched me like hawks. Wearing the button camera in the common area, I recorded Clara telling another nurse my grandfather was due for a stumble for being too steady. They laughed, suggesting moving his cane during dinner rush. The audio was clear, though their faces weren't fully visible. That night, Leo texted that his whistleblowing had blacklisted him from local facilities, forcing him into delivery driving. He'd testify if needed, saying my grandfather's suffering was worth his sacrifice. Days later, a 2 a.m. call said my grandfather had fallen and was in the ER with a possible broken wrist. At the hospital, he clutched his swollen purple arm, crying. X-rays showed a fracture. ER nurse Lila closed the door, saying the injury's twisting pattern wasn't typical of a simple fall. She'd seen similar cases from Willow Creek, but her prior reports to elder care stalled due to the facility's documentation. Lila added detailed notes to my grandfather's record, photographed the injury, and sent copies to elder care, noting 3 other families reported suspicious injuries from the facility last year. While my grandfather was in the hospital, Jude, a local reporter, called, having heard of my case from another family. He needed 2 families on record for a story. I focused on finding a safer facility first. When my grandfather was discharged, the administrator suggested moving him to their memory care unit, saying his needs had increased. I knew this was a threat memory care restricted visits. I said he had no dementia. She suggested Parkinson's often caused cognitive decline families denied. She gave me a week to decide. That afternoon, Mia texted, meeting me in the lot with photos of a new bedding chart in a storage closet, using codes like SLIP for falls and SPLASH for bathroom mishaps. My grandfather was listed as TT with wager amounts. Mia said the nurses, feeling challenged after the first exposure, had upped the bedding. I requested 5 years of facility inspection reports and complaints at the county office, getting 2 boxes of documents showing staffing shortages, medication errors, and excessive falls despite 14 citations for inadequate supervision. Spreading the papers across my living room, I made a timeline linking fall spikes to certain nurses' hires. Jude called. 2 more families joined us. One had a mother whose hip broke after staff unlocked her wheelchair brakes on purpose. Another's hidden camera caught staff placing obstacles and spilling water without warning signs during Clara's shift. A certified letter from the facility's corporate lawyers accused me of harassment via baseless claims and social media, threatening legal action. Ellen's response cited whistleblower protections, calling their threats illegal intimidation. Ethan's unannounced inspection caught Denise moving a resident's cane out of reach, documenting it as deliberate endangerment. Online, I found the facility's private equity owner made $40 million yearly, treating $2 million in fines as business costs. During a visit, my grandfather said Clara was turning residents against him, saying my actions could close the facility, leaving them homeless, isolating him at meals. Mia was suspended for alleged privacy violations after photographing the bedding chart. My job warned me about missed days, risking a performance plan. The ombudsman's visit found violations, but let the facility operate pending a correction plan. Jude's article, with the Johnsons and Parkers on record, exposed the bedding, prompting more families to share stories. A woman's mother died after 14 falls in 2 weeks. Another's father stopped falling after moving. By Monday, 17 families were ready to speak out. Tuesday, Denise confronted me, admitting the bedding was harmless fun, while denying pushing anyone, recorded on my phone. That evening, my grandfather, with uneaten meals beside him, showed worse Parkinson's symptoms from stress. Ellen filed for an emergency transfer, but a hearing was set 2 weeks out, needing stronger evidence. I found Denise's Twitter posts joking about shufflers and today's earnings with cash photos, screenshotting before they vanished. The facility's email claimed new safety training, but no one was fired. Mia whispered that Clara planned a staged fall during an inspection to discredit complaints. I helped families install discrete cameras, catching Denise and Clara creating hazards. Ethan substantiated neglect, but couldn't close the facility. Days later, Denise was suspended and Clara reassigned. Corporate offered $75,000 for my silence, which I refused. Another fall left my grandfather with stitches and more fear. Lila resisted corporate pressure to change her injury report. Jude's follow-up article, with blurred video evidence, went viral, drawing national attention. The facility sued me and Jude for defamation, demanding $500,000. Ellen countersued for abuse and negligence. At a care plan meeting, the facility rewrote my grandfather's records to show natural decline. Leo's deposition detailed the bedding and incidents. A state survey issued $30,000 in fines for immediate jeopardy violations. I found a spot at a smaller facility in Corvallis where staff knew residents' names. Clara filed a harassment complaint, warning me off staff contact. 7 families met, planning a civil lawsuit despite its long timeline. On moving day, my grandfather apologized, thinking his falls caused trouble. At the new facility, he flinched at quick movements, showing trauma. Clara and Denise got new healthcare jobs, unpunished. Mia, blacklisted, drove delivery. The old facility's new oversight was fake. Falls continued off camera. My grandfather's spirit faded, his mobility gone. Legal battles dragged, with growing bills. I joined advocacy groups, pushing for oversight laws, but progress was slow. I worked night shifts at a grocery store to cover costs, exhausted but determined. Patricia, a new contact, reported her mother's 4 falls at Willow Creek, nicknamed Spinner, on the betting chart. I shared my evidence, filling 3 boxes. The fight wasn't the swift justice I'd hoped for, but a grueling battle. Driving past Willow Creek, I saw Clara's new workplace, my hands shaking as before. She and Denise went on, while my grandfather's light dimmed. Sundays, I held his trembling hand as he slept peacefully at the new facility. Justice was this quiet moment costly, incomplete, but all we had. Thanks for joining me in this journey. I loved diving into these questions with you. Catch you in the next one. Subscribe for more stories like this.